We ask Allah to help us summarize the interpretation of the verses of Surat Al-Baqarah. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, and may blessings and peace be upon our Master Muhammad, the Messenger of Allah, may God bless him and grant him peace, and upon all his family and companions. Interpretation of verse 216 of Surat Al-Baqarah. The verse talks about jihad in the way of Allah. The verse explains to us that Allah Almighty has imposed on the believer fighting in the way of Allah Almighty, and before we complete the interpretation of the verse, we must clarify an important matter, so that we can respond to those who wronged the Muslims, that Islam spread by the sword or by fighting. And we must know that fighting in the way of Allah comes in defense of the self, and in defense of the religion, because the believer wants to spread the religion that calls for the monotheism of Allah Almighty, and because spreading the religion is what governs society and controls its behavior, we must unify Allah, because it is Allah's right over the servants to believe in Allah, because He is their creator. So whoever confronts the spread of Allah's religion and attacks the believers, Allah has given the believer the right to respond to this aggression and fight in the way of supporting the religion and defending the self. And we always find the infidel is the first to start the aggression. So Allah made it permissible for the believer to defend himself and his religion, as the infidels used to torture the believers who converted to Islam until they apostatized from their religion. Even those who did not torture the believers used to make the believers doubt the oneness of Allah and Islam and the commands of Allah and His Messenger. So it is from Allah's mercy that Allah gave the believer the right to defend himself and his religion, and this clarification is so that we know that Islam is mercy and not war, and it is not the one who defends himself and his religion who starts the aggression. The disbeliever is the one who starts the torture and doubts about the religion. Then we come to the interpretation of the noble verse, where Allah the Almighty tells the believer that this fighting is from Allah's mercy to the believers, and that not everything that a person hates is evil, and not everything that a person loves is good. So we find that many of the things that we love bring evil, and many of the things that we hate bring good, because Allah the Almighty knows evil and knows good. Among the things that a believer does not like is fighting, because it is difficult and tiring for the believer, because he exposes himself to being killed. But Allah the Almighty from His mercy tells the believer that this fighting, even if it is difficult, tiring and hateful for you, is good, because whoever dies in the way of Allah attains martyrdom with Allah and paradise that Allah has promised the believers. And therefore if a believer hates fighting, because it is a burden on the believer, he accepts it out of love, because it brings the believer into paradise, because whoever dies enters paradise, and whoever lives attains the reward of jihad and victory for the religion of Allah.
Peace, mercy and blessings of God be upon you.